What I wanted to do just to start this off was I wanted to read this transcript, and this was something that Data Below, who you may remember from last time, is our resident hacker, if you will, top 5 in the world, and has done a lot of work rather for the intelligence agencies, and did some deep diving long ago when we were exploring the Gateway experience as well as Project Stargate, and came across this transcript, and I found it absolutely incredible. But I figured I would read it because I think everybody will find it, very interesting, and then get your take on how legitimate you think it is, based on the fact that you were actually a part of this and how accurate this may in fact be, or whether or not this is potential disinformation sent out by the CIA, which we know they are notorious for doing as well. So with that being said, I will just read this. It's a few pages long, and this is of it's titled Monitor and Sub, basically. So I believe there's subject and monitor. Is that correct, David? Because they call it just Mon and Sub for, is that how?
Yeah, I mean, the terms evolved over time. This, just by you saying that, tells me that it would have had to have been very, very early work. It might have been done.
It's at 84.
It's 84.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would have been very early. And because nowadays, or even when I was there, it would have been viewer and monitor. So
Gotcha. Okay, so we have the timeline on this, and one of the most fascinating, obviously, components for me with the remote viewing are the aspects of, outside of intelligence gathering, which I think predominantly is what a lot of it was used for, but there were, to my knowledge, and I believe, Dave, you echoed this, there were situations where certain off-world things were viewed, and intelligence gathered there. And so this was taking place with a remote viewing the planet Mars. And this is the transcript, and it starts with the monitor and then sub. So it's going to go back and forth, but the first is the monitor. It says, all right, now using the information in the envelope I provided, exclusively focusing your attention now. Using the information in the envelope, focus on 40.89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west. This is the sub. I want to say it looks like, I don't know, it sort of looks, I've got an oblique view of a pyramid or pyramid form. It's very high. It's kind of sitting in a large depressed area. All right. It's yellowish or ochre colored. All right. Move in time to the time indicated in the envelope I provided. You and describe what's happening. I'm tracking severe clouds, more like a dust storm. It's geological problem. Seems to be like, just a minute. I got to iron this out. It's really weird. Just report your raw perceptions at this time. You're still early in the session. I'm looking at a after effect of a major geological problem. Okay, go back to the time before the geological problem. Total difference. It's before there's no, I don't know. Oh hell, it's like mountains of dirt appear and then disappear when you go before. See large flat surfaces, very smooth angles, walls. They're really large though. I mean, they're megalithic. All right. This is a period of time. At this period in time now, before the geological activity, look around and look around and around this area and see if you can find any activity. I'm seeing, it's like a perception of a shadow of people, very tall, thin. It's only a shadow. It's as if they were here and then they're not there anymore. Go back into a period of time when they were there. Mumbles. It's like I get a lot of static in a line of everything. It's breaking up all the time. Very fragmented pieces. Just report the raw data. Don't try to put things together. Just report the raw data. I just see a very large people. They appeared thin and tall, but very large, wearing some kind of strange clothes. All right, holding in this time period, I want you to move from your physical location in space to another physical location. But in this time period, move now to, gives the new coordinates of north and east, and I don't need to read those. Deep inside of the subject, deep inside of a cavern, not a cavern, more like a canyon. I'm looking up the sides of a steep wall. They seem to go on forever. It's like there's a structure with it's like a wall, a canyon itself has been carved. Again, I'm getting to very large structures. No no intricacies, huge sections of smooth stone. Do the structures have insides and outsides? Yes, it's like a rabbit warren corners of a room. They're really huge. I don't know. I feel like I'm standing in one. It's just really huge. Perception is that the ceiling is very high. Walls are very wide. Yes, that would be correct. This is 20 minutes later. I don't know why it skipped. There would be correct. All right. I'd like you to move to another location nearby. All right. Move from this point to this location. Gives new coordinates. They have, appears to be at the end of a very large road. There's a marker thing that is very large. It keep getting Washington Monument overlay. It's like an obelisk. All right. From this point, then let's move to another point. Now view gives new coordinates. It's like I'm in the middle of a huge circular basin of a range of mountains, almost all the way around. Very ragged mountains, very tall. Basin is very, very large. Scale seems to be off or something. It's just really big. Everything is big. I understand the problem. Just continue. See, just a right angle corner to something, but that's all. I don't see anything else. Okay, let's move to a little different place. Very close. Move from the point you are now to this location. Gives new coordinates. The cluster of squares up and down. It's like you want to make them square anyway. They're almost flush with the ground, and it's like they're connected. Something very white or reflects light. What's your position of observation as you look at this thing that's reflecting light? I'm amid oblique left angle. Sun is weird. Look back down at the ground. Now where are we going to move just a little bit from this place? Just a little bit from this place. Gives new coordinates. It's like I can just perceive. It's like radiating patterns of some kind. It's like some really strange intersecting kind of roads that are dug into valleys. You know, where the road is just a little below the edge? Tell me about the shapes of these things. They're like real neat channels cut. They're very deep. It's like a road went down. Okay, now I notice electrically you're nulled out a little bit. I want you to stay deep and recapture your focus here. It's really tough. It seems like it's just always very sporadic. I realize that. It's very important that you maintain your focus. I have a movement exercise again for you, and this is some considerable distance away. So holding the focus and time, remember the focus and time that you had before moving to now. Gives new coordinates. Take time and get back deep. See the intersecting, whatever these are aqueduct type things, these rounded bottom carved channels like road beds. See pointed tops of something on the horizon. Even the horizon looks funny and weird. It's like a different misty, it's like really far away, very vague. Okay, another movement now. 2 gives new coordinates. I see pyramids. I can't tell if it's an overlay or just because they're different. Okay, do these pyramids have insides or outsides? I got both. They're huge. It's really, it's interesting perception I'm getting. Monitor, I think he's losing his ability to move accurately, and he is attracted to things that are interesting. So we're going to go with his own. This is in parentheses, so he's not saying it, or he's not saying it to him. We're going with his own to let him go ahead and explore and see what's interesting to him rather than move on to targets indicated. So they're giving, I guess, the subject the ability to now go with what interests him versus their targets that they're specifying. It's filtered from a storm or something. Say that again, subject. There's like a shelters from storms. These structures you're seeing? Yes, they're designed for that. All right, go inside one and find the activity and tell me about it. They're different chambers, but they're almost stripped of any kind of furnishing or anything. It's like a strictly functional place for sleeping, or that's not a good word, hibernation, some form. I can't get real raw inputs, storms, savage storms, and sleeping through storms. Tell me about the ones who are sleeping through the storms. Very tall, again, very large people, but they're thin. They look thin because their height, and they dress like in, oh hell, it's like a real light silk, but it's not flowing type of clothing. It's cut to fit. Move close to one of them and ask them to tell you about themselves. They're an ancient people. They're dying. It's the past. It's the past. Their time or age. Tell me about this. They're very philosophic about it. They're looking for a way to survive, and they just can't seem to get their way out. They can't seem to find their way out. So they're hanging on while they look and wait for something to return or something coming with the answer. What is it that they're waiting for? There evidently was a group or a party of them that went to find a new place to live. It's like I'm getting all kinds of overwhelming input of the corruption of their environment. It's failing very rapidly, and this group went somewhere like a long way to find another place to live. What was the cause of the atmospheric disturbance or environmental disturbance? I see a picture like, oh hell, it's almost like a warp. It's oh God, this is difficult. Like I'm going to see, let's see the raw data. I got a globe. It's like a globe that goes through a comet's tail, or it's through a river or something. It's very cosmic. It's like space pictures. All right. Now, before you leave this individual, ask him if there is a way that if there is any way that ask him if he knows who you are, and if there is a way that you can help him in the present predicament. All I get is that they must just wait. He doesn't know who I am. I think he perceives I'm a hallucination or something. Okay, when the others left, these people were waiting. When the others left, how did they go? I get the impression of, I don't know what the hell it is. It looks like inside of a large boat, very rounded walls, shiny metal. Go along with them on their journey and find out where it is that they go. The impressions of a really crazy place with volcanoes and gas pockets, strange planets or strange plants, very volatile place. It's very much like going from a frying pan into the fire. Difference is there seems to be a lot of vegetation where the other place did not have it, and a different kind of storm. All right, it's time to come back to the sound of my voice, into the present, to right now, the 22nd of May, 1984, the sound of my voice, move back to the room, back to the sound of my voice, back further, now to the sound of my voice on the 22nd of May, 1984, end of interview. To me, that was incredibly, mind-blowing and fascinating, because I'm not sure where I saw it, but it seemed like he was going back millions of years in the regression on Mars, to a civilization that was there. And so I wanted to read that, not just for the audience to hear one of these transcripts, but also to hear what was viewed during one of them, and get your impression of it, and
Sure.
see what you're
at the top of the first page.
It just says Mars exploration approved for release, CIA RDP 96, and then a bunch of numbers basically.
There's no other writing. There's no heading like start time, end time. Like that.
It says method of site acquisition, sealed envelope coupled with geographic coordinates. The sealed envelope was given to the subject.
So, yeah. Because here's what that is. That particular verbiage to me sounds very much like Pat Price. I actually don't know when Pat Price passed away, but that sounds like Pat Price. That's how he spoke. It's also how he talked in a session. And the fact that they're using geographic coordinates as opposed to numbers, two sets of 4 numbers, which are randomly assigned based on the concept of the target, and the fact that the target's in an envelope and not a folder, that's telling me that it would have to be some continuing SRI stuff with Pat Price or some other, gifted individual that they were bringing in for research. They kept Pat Price for a very long time. And so that would not be that wouldn't be the Army remote viewing program. And I know that Ingo Swann trained the Air Force and the Navy remote viewing programs and the CIA remote viewing programs, and insisted that they all adopt the same protocol so that there was consistency in the intelligence product across the board. So everybody was using this 6-stage process. Now, that was what's called, if we were to take that and to pull it over even into the Army remote viewing program, that would be called an extended remote viewing session. But We never used envelopes with targets in them, and we never used a grid Mercator or lat long or Cartesian coordinates or anything like that. So that would have been a holdover of SRI. SRI, remember, they started in 73 and they didn't stop until 93, right around the time that everybody knew that Morehouse was writing a book. And they stopped, and I think the CIA, because the CIA knew that people were going to look, and if they still had an ongoing contract with SRI, that contract would have been FOIA'd and somebody would have got it and they would have figured it out, and their whole story of we're not doing it anymore would not have flown. So they shut that down. But yeah, that to me, my assessment of that is that it was an SRI target. It was run under an SRI protocol, and it sounded very much like a Pat Price target. And Pat was a very, very he was a remarkable viewer, a remarkable psychic. I don't think he ever did or learned, even was taught the coordinate remote viewing protocols or even the extended remote viewing protocols. But that was a monitored session utilizing a researcher, and they kept giving him movement by giving him different lat long coordinates, which they could do on Mars. And what he was describing, just listening to the words, in my mind, sounded like Olympus Mons, which was one of the targets that I did, and it was also one of the targets that were part of the historical off-planet file. And this is just what I think is, I don't know, if it is, and it did come from SRI, then it's just proof that this historical off-planet target effort was ongoing for a very long time. It originated, in SRI probably, and it just kind of got carried over, at least into the Army unit that I was in, because we started off doing things like, looking at the front side of the moon, or just looking at the back side of the moon, or then looking at rovers, and then looking at Twin Peaks, describing atmosphere, describing colors, describing surface, describing all those different kinds of things. That's how they incrementally moved you up until they would give you some of these more pressing targets. So the historical target database went further into the cosmos than Mars, but they took you through the moon up to Mars, and they did that because they had quantifiable feedback. So Olympus Mons, as you know, is the largest volcano known, and it is the largest volcano on the surface of Mars. And the tubes and things that they were describing, I've seen those as a remote viewer, and those are lava tubes. And as lava moves through those tubes, there are tubes in places like Arizona. There are tubes in Iceland. There are tubes very similar to that in someplace within the Midwest. And I know that those tubes are being very seriously looked at and researched, and that habitats and other things are being planned for use within those tubes, and they're rehearsing that now for the manned mission to Mars. Why? Because the idea that you're going to exist on the surface of Mars, like in the movie The Martian, that's not feasible, as most people understand it. And it's not feasible because of high winds and dust storms with high degrees of debris, ultra UV ratings, high temperatures, other kinds of things. And so the place where you're protected is in those lava tubes. And on Mars at Olympus, up in and around the Olympus Mons complex and all the other volcanoes that are there, those tubes can be hundreds of meters wide, and they run for hundreds of miles. They're not like a quarter-mile thing. They're hundreds of miles. And there are caverns in there that are the size of Manhattan, where you might have 3 tubes come together and meet, form this giant cavern. And as the lava drains out of the cavern, the exterior of the cabin cools, and it creates this giant void that's there. And I know that in historical file, when we were doing them, and we were just doing them based on coordinates, producing the results as either coordinate remote viewers or in some cases extended remote viewers, but never monitored, and then typing up our summaries and handing them in, then you'd get this feedback of you were on a historical off-planet target to Mars. And I did not see bodies laying on slabs, but I did see abandoned structures in those giant caverns that we're describing. And so when we send our manned mission to Mars, they're going to go into those lava tubes, and that's where they're going to set up shop. That's because they're protected there. They're protected from UV. They're protected from assault by flying objects and high winds. They're protected from meteors and anything else that's there. Plus, they also viewers described ice in those, water in them. And if there is, in fact, water there, as viewers were describing, 25, 30 years ago, they will use that ice. They will go there with a capability of forming their own hydrogen rocket fuel to get back. So they won't have to accept a logistics shipment of a craft that goes all the way there that's expendable, that just has fuel on board. They'll actually synthesize their own rocket fuel to get back from, or to go further by, processing it out of water there. Plus, they'll have water to drink once filtered, and they'll have water to grow food once there.
So did you, in your remote viewing of Mars, did you come across any of these entities that were incredibly tall?
No, but I saw the structures. I mean, I saw the
pyramids and obelisk shapes.
Well, I didn't see pyramids, and when I was hearing that, I was thinking that was looking off into the distance on the horizon and seeing a pyramidical shape that's a cone shape. It's from the volcanoes, and they would be massive. But inside, I saw quite rectangular structures with occasional rounded elements to them, but mostly rectangular structures that look probably very much like just looking at any modern, any city that you would see in the U.S., but I didn't see windows and things like that in them, and they were abandoned. But that's what I saw. And what I saw was, dovetailed into what viewers before me had seen. This, to me, is what we're looking at or listening to here is an SRI mission.
Very cool. Well, thank you for hearing that and giving your feedback on it, as well as personal experience with that.
Sure.
It fascinates me to no end. And hopefully other people who are up on stage, when they get to their questions, there'll be similar lines or anything that has to do with the phenomena, UFO phenomena, or anything therein. But I don't want to take any more time. I do want to pass it to Robbie, and Ted, feel free, obviously, at any time if there's something that you want to chime in with your experience with this as well. Please feel free to do that. Robbie, you are up for a question, my dear. Please take it away. Dave, I got a quick just question to add on to that, because I think the historical off-planet targets is one of the most fascinating things for me about the remote viewing programs that you were a part of. And I am curious, just based on the transcript that I read earlier from the remote viewer who was tasked with remote viewing Mars millions of years ago and jumping from coordinate to coordinate, when he was discussing these incredibly tall, very thin beings wearing very form-fitted, silky, garb, and they were, essentially the planet was dying. Some cataclysm had happened on Mars, and they were trying to find another planet to go to and waiting for people to come back. And he, the the moderator, or forgot what they're actually monitor. Thank you. Got Clubhouse on the mind. The monitor was asking the subject, did this being that you were trying to interact with and ask questions to, did he recognize you or understand what you were saying? And he said he believed that he thought he was a hallucination, basically. And what I'm curious of is how fascinating this is, just based on our understanding of even that time exists, even though we know it's more of an illusion than anything, or just a construct here in this dimension on this planet. But that when you would remote view in any of these historical off-planet targets and come in contact with beings, that this idea of an aberration, basically, do you think that some of these things that we encounter, basically, or that people seem to encounter, whether spirits or any type of an alien or a demonic entity, whatever it may be, could very well be the exact same thing of almost this aberration, if you will, of another consciousness from a different part of the universe, remote viewing in a particular place, like showing up the same way this remote viewer did 1 million years ago plus to a civilization on a different planet? Do you think that that is ultimately what is transpiring, or could be a component of what is witnessed in some of these accounts?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, and it's feasible, I think, that it could be that. I mean, what I can tell you is that not everything that's out there that's scooting around is kind or benevolent and friendly and loving. There are some very malevolent societies, and that became clear. I think the beauty of doing, looking at them as remote viewers, is that you're detecting and decoding a waveform. You're not actually physically present. You get this sense that you are, and you get the sense that they recognize your presence there, or they are aware of it. But nobody that I know of ever had an actual telepathic exchange with them. If it appeared that the entity was aware of your presence, there was never an exchange. It was just maybe some sort of an acknowledgement that you were there, but not engaging you. So I thought, which I still think that's Pat Price. I liked Pat Price's explanation with it, that he just thinks I'm a hallucination. And I think that's probably a better descriptor for much of the things that I encountered, as opposed to some of the other, kind of trifling answers and descriptions I tried to put to the exchanges, because some of them are very powerful and very benevolent, but very much on purpose, and they couldn't care less about our ability to detect and decode, or to be to see them, and while others can give off the sense of being quite annoyed by it. So, and I think that there's a lot of things that we could be interpreting as demonic, or those kinds of things which could actually be another being, if that answered the question.
And really quick, David, just as a funny kind of tie-in with going back within the remote viewer on Mars, and you're agreeing kind of with the depiction, or I guess comparison to a hallucination of being viewed by whatever these entities may be when you are remote viewing or going to any of these historical off-planet targets. There's a crazy tie-in and similarity to the DMT experience, or even 5-MeO, but I think it's a little more standard with just standard DMT. Is that a lot of the times, once you blast off and you transcend essentially this dimension, you'll come in contact with these beings of insane intelligence, and they're always very surprised in a way to see you. Sometimes they're annoyed to see you, like you shouldn't be there, and you are there, and while you're there, they happen to just bestow something upon you, some level of knowledge, something profound that's kind of beyond anything that we can really take back with us and any human words or descriptions. But that showing up in this other dimension, in this other place with these beings or entities, whatever we want to call them, who are always somewhat just shocked, like, how did you get here? Like, you shouldn't be here, and but you're here. Yeah. It's very fascinating. I don't know if you'd heard anything about that or any of those. If you ever read Dr. Strassman's DMT, the Spirit Molecule book, or anything like that. It's one of the most fascinating reads that I could not recommend more if you haven't read it. It's about the first clinical trials that were done since the embargo on psychedelics in the 60s that took place in the 90s. And it is just a fascinating book documenting these clinical trials with DMT done intravenously. And it's mind-blowing, and my experiences with it are kind of echo the same type of thing. And the similarities basically between kind of what you've discussed so far and other things mentioned tonight within that transcript kind of echo a similar experience. So didn't know if you had anything.
That's amazing. I mean, yep, it's there. Quite frankly, I mean, there was never any big dialogue. It wasn't like, oh, hey, glad you're here. Sit down. Let me start thinking things for you, kind of thing. It was always a sense of surprise or irritation or just ignoring you, because it's like, mind your own business, if they were aware of you at all. And I never quibbled over that. I felt like it was kind of intrusive to do it, although it was a really cool thing to do, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed getting the feedback and being able to look back through the years and seeing what other people were able to glean from that particular target. And I don't know. It's something that I'm very comfortable in knowing that it's out there. It's something that I'm very comfortable in in knowing that that when the time comes, we will have a place, or maybe we will go there, or maybe there will be an exchange, or maybe something else. But I'm not one of those people that look skyward, waiting for the alien life forms to come down and cure humanity of all its ills. I just I've never seen any evidence like one of them or a civilization turning around and going, yeah, we'll be there shortly, just hang on a little bit longer, kind of thing. It was never like that, and I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm just saying, therein does salvation not lie. We have to do it ourselves. And I think that there's probably a lot of barriers that remain up with some of these other civilizations, in that it would be like crossing the street or the tracks and going to the ghetto, So why would they want to? If we continue to savagely, destroy and beat and burn and hate and, following around with different belief structures, I don't understand how some of these very, very highly evolved beings and or civilizations, other than just stopping and gawking, shall we say, would have any great interest in us. What do we have to offer other than please help us?
Could not agree more.
Fast food, what's it going to be?
Yeah, we're not ready.
Taco Bell?
Not ready to join our galactic neighbors by any means. Nobody wants a part of what we are.
Put yourself in their place. What would you do, looking at us and what we do on this planet? What would you do? Stop and say, step aside, let me take over, or would you just go, look, kids, take a look at that? Aren't you happy that you don't live there?
God, that is what we are the example of. Just be happy you don't live there.
Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna take us home, or have you take us home rather, with one final thing, just to continue to keep those palates wet for everybody.
Yeah.
I want you to share one of the most just fascinating to you, or mind-blowing, amazing, whatever, of the historical off-planet targets that you encountered? I think last time you mentioned a ship. I can't remember. It was like a crystal almost or something. I can't remember specifically.
It's called the Golden.
Yeah, that
the
was
Golden
it.
Boys.
Yeah.
The nickname for it is the Golden Boys.
The Golden Boys. What is, in your opinion, if not that one, then another one that is just where you viewed a species that was completely foreign to us, perhaps animal hybrid like, or whatever the case. We've heard all sorts of things for anybody who's been in studying ufology or anything therein for a period of time. Various species that have been reported to exist, whether avian in nature, reptilian in nature, or other type of forms of hybrid humanoid things. Has there been anything that you've come in contact with in that arena, or a planet or a civilization? What is probably one of the coolest historical off-planet targets that you have witnessed?
Well, let me mention two very briefly. Probably the most important for me was the lava tubes around Olympus Mons. And I'll explain to you why. Because seeing a civilization inside a void where the lava tubes, converged, that was, the size of Manhattan. I mean, that's a huge cavern on a very huge planet. And to see that evidence hidden away from any prying eyes or rovers or other things was very powerful for me, because I knew that one day we would be there and we could get feedback on that. As it stood, the feedback was, slow in coming, but still that gave me empirical evidence of what we were seeing. And of course, this was always done blind or double blind. So it wasn't that somebody said, well, let's go to Olympus Mons and look inside, the lava tubes. It was blind. You didn't know what you were looking at, but people were describing it. And as I heard you reading what I believe was Pat Price describing it, it was a perfect, it was a perfect sharing of the same kinds of things that I have seen come up with, that I have come up with, that other viewers have come up with. Other viewers now outside of the military remote viewing program, because I carried those targets out of there and I have my students do them. And I have them do them, and they're always doing it blind, and they either do it coordinate remote viewing, or some of the targets are used for extended remote viewing. And then I give them, examples in the feedback. I give them copies of what the stuff that all the other viewers that have come before them have been able to capture. And to do that at Olympus Mons, and to know that that's now the plan, because 25 years ago, the plan of doing a manned mission to Mars and putting them in lava tubes wasn't discussed that I'm aware of. But then to hear Pat Price talking about that and describing it in that way, and describing vegetation in there and other things, it goes, do you see what I mean? It becomes this empirical evidence of everything that we were talking about and he was talking about. Now you're looking at it, and it is exactly what their plan is. So it's, for me, that kind of connected the dots empirically to say, these are the things we were describing 25 years ago, and in some cases 30 years ago. And now, at present time, it's part of the plan. It's how they plan to execute the manned mission to Mars, where they plan to house them, where they plan to use water that's there to grow crops, to make, to make rocket fuel, to live there and live there safely while they explore these structures that are there. And I saw the structures. Pat Price saw the structures. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of remote viewers have seen those structures using those same coordinates and sending them to those places. Not the latitude and longitude that SRI was giving him, but the randomly assigned numbers representative, the concept of the target. That was powerful for me. The other powerful thing for me that I have seen over years was coming to the understanding some 30 years ago that the universe was a living, breathing organism that was balancing energy, positive or negative, good, evil, whatever you want to call it, dark, light, across itself through this capillary system, this lymphatic system, and viewers were sketching it, and there all kinds of nicknames came up, carried over from the old remote viewing units, historical targets. It was called, and I hate this name, the psychic hot tub. That was the name given to this, and the reason the name was given to it is because students would find themselves in the stream, in the flow of this capillary system. And the sensation of it moving around them and over them, and the things that they would get glimpses of that were being moved, that were being moved through this system, affected them emotionally. It affected them spiritually. It affected them in a bunch of different ways. People had real physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual feelings for standing in this flow of energy because it was so direct and it was so balancing. And then decades later, the cover of Scientific American comes out showing this capillary system in lime green. Of course, not calling it a capillary system, but saying, look at what we've discovered now about the universe. It actually has, this structure and this system of moving energy through it. And it's outside of anything that we ever thought about before. So if you look at the sketches that viewers were producing 30 years ago, 25, 20, 15, et cetera, and then you see this cover, this artist rendering on the cover, showing this capillary system in lime green throughout the universe, it was, for me, another one of those really, truly codifying, poignant moments that allowed me to once again embrace just the beauty of what we're involved in and what we're capable of doing, the promise and potential of humanity, that this ability is gifted to us, that we're born into this existence with it. And the sooner any and all of us can get back to that understanding, and the sooner we can start, preparing a new generation to be this awakened and empowered kind of a generation. And we need one generation and another to, to be in love and to be grateful for, for their blessings in this life, to be grateful for the people in their life, to be healthy, to be good to themselves, to be academics that study and research, to be workers that provide and carry and do for the planet and for humanity, to be the kind of person that reflects, to be an observer and living an authentic life, to be worshipful, however they find, that to be. My worship is remote viewing now, and this human potential to see and know and be these omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, eternal beings. And I am so eternally grateful, no matter what happened in the telling of that story. I am so grateful to have had that opportunity. I am so grateful for that little turkey that shot me in the helmet, there in Jordan, because had that chain of events not started, I might not have ever been part of this. And how less rich would my life have been had that not happened for me?
Wow. That, well said, my friend, and beautifully said, I might add. And how true that is. And once again, hindsight is always, it's that Taoist, I think, proverb or whatever. Things are neither good nor bad; they just are. And whenever things happen in life that we want to ascribe a good or bad meaning to, things that seem good can ultimately end up being bad, and things that seem bad can end up being the best thing that ever happens to us. And it's best to just stay in that flow without giving a label to things in life to find that true, I guess, level of peace, because you never know what terrible situation, like being shot in the head, might end up being the thing that makes your life ultimately an incredible, fulfilling journey. That if it didn't happen, you would be unfulfilled, and ultimately being the thing that you now know, you shouldn't have been, and ultimately didn't want to be. I do want to ask this, and we're closing, and this is just because I'm curious for when we do the podcast with just you and I in the future. Do you have records that you still possess of all of the historical off-planet targets that that were not destroyed?
Of course I do.
Perfect. Okay. I'm definitely going to want to dive in deep to those on the podcast, because I know especially the audience that I have is going to be very, very interested in hearing more of those stories, because they're so freaking cool. Oh, hey, you made it all the way to the end. Me too. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share with all of your friends across every social media platform. And then if you have time, go to nateknighttalks.com and join the NNT community and research database if you have time and the resources and want to support what I'm doing here.